welcome. You are watching the Newshour Agenda. I am Padmaja Joshi. In 4 days from now, the Prime Minister will inaugurate the new Parliament building of India. And on that occasion, a part of India's history that had mysteriously been forgotten and buried is not only going to be revived, but will be returned to its rightful place. May 28 will see the Prime Minister install a historic golden sceptre near the Speaker's seat in the new Parliament. This sceptre, known as Sengol, has a deep historical significance connected to the very birth of our nation. When power was to be transferred from the British to India in 1947, Lord Mountbatten asked what ritual should be followed for this transfer. It's then that it was decided to adopt the age-old ritual of the Chola case, the handing over of the Sengol. For the sacred function to be conducted in Delhi, Adhinams were specially called. Priests from Adhinams were specially called in, and a Madras-based jeweler was then commissioned to construct the Sengol.
Drawings it was a round thing with a long pole. This மாதிரி செய்ய வேண்டியவருக்கு இது நல்ல பெரிய இடத்துக்கு போகுது, ஜாகிரதையாக செய்யணும், நல்லா செய்யணும். Then give the order. It was made of silver with gold coating. I was very happy to be associated with the making it. Adinam people supervised it. And நமக்கே சுதந்திரம் வந்துடுத்து, அந்த சந்தோஷத்தில் இருந்தோம். அதுக்காக செய்ய வேண்டிய ஒரு செங்கோலை ஆதீனம் அவர்கள் நமக்கு கொடுத்ததில் மிகவும் சந்தோஷம்.
Mr. Etirajulu, who constructed that Sengol, he's 96 years now and he still remembers that moment in history. And finally, on the 14th of August 1947 at 10:45 p.m. That's when India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, received the Sengol from priests as a formal handing over of power. After this handover, Pandit Nehru made the famous speech about freedom at midnight. But it's strange that this important piece of history was completely buried. Had you even heard about the Sengol before this? I hadn't. Hardly any history book even speaks about it. Even though it was documented in Time magazine at that time, this freedom at midnight moment never included the Sengol. The entire process and the sceptre barely spoken of for 7 decades. In fact, since 1947, the Sengol itself has been kept at Anand Bhavan in Prayagraj, the Nehru family's ancestral home. The question though is, why? Sengol, a symbol of dharma and righteousness, a part of our history, of our independence, forgotten like this? That is a question that the Indian public must ask, and it definitely deserves answers.
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
And joining us on the Newshour Agenda is a very special guest. We have Mr. S Gurumurthy, editor of Thuglak, live with us. Sir, I want to start by asking you, where did the original thought of having the Sengol to be brought into our parliament originate? Where did this idea come from?
This idea came because there was originally a Sengol handed over at before the midnight of 1947, August 15th, 14th, 15th. And the existence of it came to be known. And why a Sengol ceremony was adopted, that came to be known. And the veracity of that incident came to be known. And Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is the right occasion to bring it back to the knowledge of the people. So it is not that it has come by an accident or by an unmeditated date. It is a meditated date, the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Why even the Tamil Nadu government brought out this, recalled this incident of a saint from Tamil Nadu having been specially asked to come to Delhi to hand over the sacred Sengol, which is called in English sceptre and in Sanskrit Dharmadanda. He was specially flown and he was asked to hand over this, and it was handed over according to a certain ceremony which is known in Tamil Nadu according to the traditions of the Chola kings. So all this came to be known, and so in the right occasion, even the Tamil Nadu government thought in the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav they should bring it out. So the central government thought that it is right to bring this profound, sacred, spiritual symbolism that was adopted to signify the transfer of power from the British to Bharat, from Mountbatten to Jawaharlal Nehru. And there is a history behind. If you want, I will tell you the history.
No, but first, before you tell us the history, I want to know the more recent history of how did you broach the idea to the Prime Minister that we should put it in Parliament, or did it occur to him? Did he read about it somewhere? Why I ask this is because this literally, to a lay person, we had never heard about it. We heard about that famous speech of freedom at midnight, but we never heard about the Sengol. We never read about the Sengol. It's not in our books anywhere. How did it suddenly occur to you or to the Prime Minister?
It didn't occur to me. Even I came to know it like all of you came to know now. I came to know sometime back. You know, this was actually revealed by the Kanchi Mahaswami, who lived for 100 years, one of the greatest saints known in South India. Unquestionably a very great spiritual soul, like Raman Maharishi and all. He revealed in 1978, on the occasion of the Independence Day, to some of his disciples that this is what happened at that time. And it was recorded by that disciple and he kept it in his notes. And this was later found to be in a book. And then the Tamil Nadu newspapers began talking about it in 2018. 2019, all this has come out in Tamil Nadu newspapers. And the news, because the media traced it to the Adinam, the Mathadipati who had administered it. His mutt is called Thiruvavadurai Mutt. This is one of the ancient Saiva mutts. So they found Jawaharlal Nehru's photographs holding this Sengol, and then the paraphernalia of the ashrama people standing there. And the ashrama had sent a message to Pandit Nehru, and how the whole ceremony took place, that is described in the history of the records of the ashrama. All this came out in the newspaper. And one of the newspapers even contacted a person who is not in India now, who had accompanied the people, and how it happened and all that, he had revealed. So all this had come out by 2019. Then in the Thuglak magazine, I put together all these things, what the Mahaswami said, what the newspapers had said. And one of the newspapers also traced the Sengol in Anand Bhavan in Allahabad. So this much became known, that there was a ceremony, that there was a Sengol which signifies, according to Tamil traditions, the transfer of power to the new king. And the Sengol has a special significance. It is called Semmai. Semmai means just rule, fair rule. And Kol means the stick. It is called Dharmadhanda, as I told you, in Sanskrit. So this was also there. But how the event came to be conducted, who suggested this, all this came to be known in stages. The ashrama's record showed that it was Mountbatten who started this process, asked Nehru that we have a certain ritual in our tradition. So what is the tradition which you will follow? because we pass the Indian Independence Act and we create records and then we do all the legal things. But what do we do to elevate this whole process to a level where it will be moral, spiritual? Have you got any model? Then Jawaharlal Nehru, this is according to the Ashrama records. Jawaharlal Nehru then approached Rajaji, because Rajaji was both a statesman, a politician, a lawyer, and at the same time a very highly learned person. So he asked Rajaji. Rajaji then approached he knew that the traditional way of handing power is by a Rajaguru. This system prevails in Thailand even today. The Rajaguru of Thailand who initiates the transfer of power is trained in Kanchipuram. The Kanchi Shankara Mutt trains him. In fact, I saw that the young boy who had come there about 10 years back for taking his training and all that. That's how I came to know the Rajaguru system exists in Thailand. So, but there is no Rajaguru system here. It's all gone. The last thing that happened was maybe in Chhatrapati Shivaji's period. So we have lost continuity with our tradition. But that tradition exists in Tamil Nadu. That is what Rajaji found. That the Shaiva mutts have a tradition of handing the Sengol, which is Dharmadanda, to the new ruler and says that you should rule justly and fairly. Thiruvalluvar, who is one of the most celebrated saint poets, about whom you must be knowing, Thirukkural is one of the most famous Tamil literature of universal value. It is not of this religion or that religion. He has taken everything to a higher level of human behavior. He has written 10 verses on what Sengol means. So it has a great significance in Tamil civilization. And this is aligned with overall Indian civilization, not something separate. But that tradition existed in Tamil Nadu. So Rajaji advised to Pandit Nehru, the best thing is that you go for a tradition which is surviving, which is existing. You are not discovering anything new. So the best way is that we bring this Adinam to make this, to perform this ceremony. Nehru accepted it. On that basis, the most leading jeweler of Tamil Nadu, Ummadi Bangaru Chetty, he was asked to make the Sengol. Of course, he is 96 years old man. He is available. He has also given a fight and all that. I don't know whether you had occasion to see.
We did, yes.
Yeah, he is also available. And so he made the Dharmadanda Sengol, on the top of which you find the Nandi, and there is a description about that this was presented on that day by the by so and so the ashrama, and the senior ashram head was ill. He could not travel. He sent his deputy, and so they came with the most famous Nadaswara Vidwan, Rajaratnam Pillai. He's one of the most famous Nadaswara Vidwan. He came along with, and they came with their granthis called Oduvars. This there is a 11 verse chapter in Devaram which invokes the blessings of Shiva and says finally when this Sengol is given, with the blessings of Shiva, you will rule forever. This is the rough and ready meaning of it. Then it was given to Jawaharlal. Jawaharlal held it. And then photograph, and before that, there is a small ritual. That is, the first the Sengol was given to Mountbatten, and it was taken from him. And then Gangajal Abhishekam was given, so that the sins of the British do not come to us. And then the saint gave it to Nehru. All this happened in Tinmurti, where, of course, there was a Havan and all that, about which you will find the description in many of these things. And then once this came to be known from the ashram's records and also the records of the jeweler, then it became the responsibility. At that time, you know what happened after I wrote this in Thuglak, at that time I had no idea that this will all become something. Padmaja Joshi, the great dance artist, she told me, Guru, I want to translate this into English. I want to send it to the Prime Minister. It was she who thought of sending it to the Prime Minister. And told that this must be because the Azadi Ka Amrit, actually it didn't struck her actually. The Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav let the Prime Minister take the initiative to bring it back to the knowledge of the people because it is such a profound event. And Jawaharlal himself accepted it, and a person like Rajaji suggested it, and it was a living tradition, and it was not a sectarian or anything. It is not to establish a religious rule. So she wrote a mail to the Prime Minister. That is how the process began. I think she wrote the mail sometime in March 2021 or like that. Afterwards, the government began to find out. Of course, I also did some investigation, and I found this was reported in the Time magazine. And then, of course, D.F. Karaka's book describes it in great detail. Afterwards, some Pakistani writer had described why there was a delay, why the Indians did not accept freedom on 14th, and why they went for 14th, 15th, and then all kinds of, in the night, there was a private flag hoisting and then public flag hoisting on 15th. So like that, then Ambedkar had also, in a way, critically asked Pandit Nehru, did you not take Dharmadanda and all that? So the authenticity of the whole thing, the background, the history, the personae, everything got established. Now the only question is, what should the government do with it? And of course, the Sengol was also traced where it is. It was kept there. So I think the government felt, and rightly according to me, because anyone will feel that this is an occasion to recall everything that happened at the time of independence. And it is appropriate that the government has recalled it. And recalling it doesn't mean that we will recall an incident. It has to be given the due place that it was supposed to have. Otherwise, you don't adopt these things, the symbolism, just like symbols have a great value. And so, possibly the government felt it is the right thing to install it in the new park.
And that's what I want to ask you next. Was overseeing of this part of living history a mere oversight, or was it deliberate? Because to not talk about the Sengol when we are talking about India's independence, our moment of independence, is like talking about the Ram Mandir and not talking about the Bhumi Pujan.
You see, I am not going to get into a conflict here, because it is the rulers who ruled the country, they will have to explain why they didn't make it public. And what did they do with the Sengol, which was, in a way, it was part of the protocol for transfer of power between the British and India. It was not a private ritual. It was because the idea was initiated by the ruler, by the colonial ruler. And he was a party to the whole thing. And so, this is, though it was in a ceremony, it was an agreed ceremony, part of the protocol. And so, there is no reason to treat it as something which is some informal thing that happened at home or something like that. So, it is they who have to explain. I am not going to get into any quarrel. This is a very solemn occasion. I would not like any controversy at this point. That once the authenticity of the happening and the purpose of the happening and the higher values that are implicit in this whole ceremony is established.
So let me ask a follow-up to that. Not wanting to, stir any controversy, but we remember that Pandit Nehru had very strong views vis-a-vis keeping away religion from government. Could that be one of the reasons that this was kept on the sidelines? We remember what he told Dr. Rajendra Prasad also, his views vis-a-vis.
Then he should not have gone through this. He also knew that occasions demand a value higher than normal human contracts. There is a higher value. Even in law, there is law and there is something called equity and good conscience, which takes you to a higher level of interpretation. There people talk about constitutional morality. It is not in the Constitution. There is a higher sense of morality. So once you take the plane to a higher level, morality is not something which is defined in written words. It is something which the people understand. The people understand these things. Unless there was a consensus on this ceremony, do you mean to say it would have happened? And Jawaharlal Nehru was part of the consensus. So he may not have personally believed it. I am not saying that Jawaharlal Nehru probably willingly did it. He probably was willing to go by the consensus of the people around him, such great person like Rajaji advising, and even Mountbatten feeling that there has to be a certain symbolism involved in it. You may know all the symbolism you are seeing, you saw in the coronation of the new king. And this happens. Even the Bible is recited in British Parliament. You know, this has nothing to do with secularism. It has to do with certain traditions. Questioning all traditions is not secularism. Secularism is that if there is an offensive word in one religion, our secularism is not rejecting religions. Our secularism is in harmonizing religions. If a religion says that all religions are equal and it doesn't differentiate, there is no conflict between that religion and secularism. It is only if some religion says that other religion is wrong and they should be eliminated and only our religion should prevail. There is a conflict between that religion and secularism. At least in India, according to the fundamentalism project of the Chicago University, there is the concept of fundamentalism itself is not applicable to the Eastern religions, which includes Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, Taoism, and so our idea of religion is consistent with secularism. So even looking at it from that perspective, Jawaharlal Nehru was perhaps right in accepting to undergo a ritual process, which is not against anyone.
But even today, many are arguing that the idea of a dharma dand or a sceptre, it's an anachronism. We are a modern democracy and this is a sign of monarchy. How would you respond?
That's why I feel that they must read the Supreme Court judgments, which have distinguished between dharma and religion. They don't know. Most of them are illiterates. The Supreme Court has understood the idea of dharma is independent of religion, higher than religion. It doesn't even believe in religion. Dharma is virtuous behavior. That is why in Hindu traditions, you have ethical non-believers accepted even as rishis. So our tradition is different. Our idea of believers and non-believers is not the Abrahamic idea of believers and non-believers on the basis of which we are thinking what is modern and what is tradition. My view is there is nothing called modern or, you see, the idea of modernity itself has been in the last 3-4 years, at least from 2000 and 2019, there is a huge discourse going on at the global level that the West is not the source of modernity. Each civilization has developed its own way of modernizing. It doesn't, modernization doesn't mean language, it doesn't mean dress, it doesn't mean the way you eat. If I eat by hand, I'm still modern. If I have a tikka on my forehead, I'm still modern. But those who speak for modernity will think that this is not modern, it is anachronism. Then you are prescribing a rule of behavior in the name of modernity. You are prescribing a rule of thinking in the name of modernity. You are prescribing a rule of public behavior, state behavior, in the name of modernity. It's all wrong.
Finally, let me ask you, do you think the installation is also going to strike at all of those arguments which argue, which talk about the North-South divide? Because here it is proven that at the very time our country became independent, the handover was done through a sceptre that was designed in the south, made in the south of India, blessed in the south of India, and handed over to our first Prime Minister by Adhinams.
I think it should be seen the other way. Actually, it is an attempt to integrate South India with the North. You see, much of the happenings at that time were North-centric. And even the religion, the clash between religion were all North. There was nothing in the South. We were absolutely peaceful. We had no difficulty. For 1,000 years, if there was any area which was least affected by any invasion, any disturbance, it is this. It is one of the purest geographies and history, culture, value, behavior, people who have no idea about these clashes. And so this idea is there. And at that time, there was a raging separatist movement in Tamil Nadu. You must understand why Jawaharlal Nehru must have thought of a southern ritual. At that time, this Dravida Nadu demand was going on. So he wanted, the idea was to co-opt Tamil Nadu traditions, Tamil Nadu values, and Tamil Nadu saints, and Tamil Nadu literature, and Tamil Nadu symbols as part of the nation. It's actually the other way around. So there is no North-South divide. It was actually to bridge it. Because most of us do not know history, nor do we want to know history. We don't want to know history of even the last 75 years. We have a rotten mind which has been developed in the name of public discourse, in the name of modernity, in the name of pseudo-secularism, in the name of 100 other things. But we must keep balance in all of this. So I think what the government has done, and thanks to Dr. Padmaja Joshi, who decided to approach the Prime Minister, I think the government has taken the right decision. Of course, in anything, the opposition is not going to agree with anything. Opposition viewpoint should be seen as not a neutral viewpoint. It is an opposition viewpoint. And India opposition is now, it is much worse than what America is. The polarization is so much. They are not going to agree with anything. And this is not something which was done by some Rajendra Prasad, who was a believer, it was done by Pandit Nehru, who is the icon of secularism, who is the icon of modernity. Do you mean to say Jawaharlal Nehru was a pretender? No. He also felt that higher support is needed. You may not give the name, email, address for that belief. But he also felt that a higher value system is needed. But the question is why it wasn't made public? Why this symbolism, which is an agreed protocol arrangement between the outgoing government and the incoming government, was kept out of public knowledge? These are all things for them to explain. Nehru need not explain, because he entered into this ritual. It is those who succeeded after Nehru who have to explain why they kept it.
Well, we certainly hope that someday at least the public will get that explanation. Till the time, it's great that at least this part of our hidden history but living history is finally before India's public.
I must congratulate this government for aligning. Of course, it all got aligned because of the way the truth came out also of the Parliament new building, where it should be actually. And the 75th anniversary year, the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, it got aligned as if by some kind of divine will. And the government took the right decision according to me. I must congratulate the Prime Minister for having taken this decision.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Gurumurthy, for speaking to us.